My name is Gen Nech, and thank you all for coming out. If you stay till the end, we are announcing the bingo winning numbers at the Bellagio for tomorrow. Just kidding. But in all fairness, I do want this to be a fun and interactive experience, and I want to reflect everything that we've learned and showcase it. So I can't do this without my panel. Where's my panel? Panelists, can I get you up here? So while I come on up here, I'll tell you guys a little bit about me. I'm Gen Nech. I'm a math and science tutor. I have a very cute 4-year-old that goes to preschool, and I ask him every day, son, what did you learn at school? He goes, Ruby, she wore a pink dress. True story. And then at this time, I want to give my panelists the opportunity to introduce themselves and give us a little bit about insight about what they do and walk us through a typical day in your shoes. So I'm going to hand it off to Philip. Take it away.
All right, my name is Philip Lampron. I am the upper school principal at Northeast Carolina Prep. We say upper school because we have grades 8 through 12 in my building. That's in Tarboro, North Carolina. I also own and operate Lampron LLC with my beautiful wife back there, Dr. Lauren Lampron. She's actually the rock star of the family. If you Google her, you'll find a lot of cool stuff. So, moving into next year, I'm going to focus solely on Lampron LLC. So, encouraged and excited about moving forward and developing some relationships here and connecting with folks. But yeah, that's me. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip.
My name's Kit. Turn on microphone. Is it on now? It's not. Is it better? Yes?
Switch.
Okay. My name is Tony Klein. I'm the superintendent of University Academy, which is a pre-K through 12 charter LEA in Kansas City. This is our 22nd year. I've been there for 8, previously in California for 14 before that. As a superintendent, there's no 2 days that are alike. I think that was the second part of your question. So last night I had a board meeting that went for 3 hours, and it was great, but then I had to get on a plane and come here this morning, and you go to basketball games, you deal with employee stuff, but the most important thing you have to do is you have to make time to think about what's next, to respond to what your local employers are wanting, your local higher ed partners are wanting, what your parents are wanting, what your students are wanting. And I'm really focused on staff right now. As we all know, there's a teacher shortage. That's going to come up here later on, and really, really, really concerned about that over the next 10 years.
Hey everybody, my name is Phoenix Goodman. I have a background in lobbying and policy writing for legislation. Background came from more of a economic and a banking background for the legislation that we were working on. My interest is now going towards education, and I am, as Gene, will work with Gene over here as a Chief Innovation Officer here at your academics. And my goals here are to essentially change the law to create a better and more perfect education system.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Mm-mm.
Hello.
Can we pass her? Thank you.
Thank you, Phoenix. I'm Renee Westlake. I have a mentoring business. I work with primarily school districts, but many young teachers, and help them to blend their curriculum with student leadership programs. And I mostly work with elective teachers. My background, my first 4 decades was first as a music teacher, a band teacher, a jazz band teacher, AP music theory, developed a world drumming program in our middle schools, and then ended my public school career as a fine arts supervisor, overseeing music, art, dance, and drama. And I am here just because I believe in kids, and I believe that by meeting people like you, I've already met Esther, and the people that I've met here today, these are the rock stars, and together this think tank that's is GFEL is going to help us all to do better things for kids, and kids are the best.
Thank you, my panelists. I'm going to take it back from here. All right, so the way this is going to go is going to be very informal. So if anybody wants to interrupt me and ask me a question, you can. And then if anybody in the audience has a question, raise your hand. You can also interrupt us and ask. And I actually want to get to know you guys a little bit. So I'm a tutor, and I don't start anything until I know who I'm working with. So by a show of hands or a round of applause, where are my public school students? There's a few. You're going to have to put your phones down. You're just like students. Private school students, anybody? Just by a show of hands. A few. Any homeschoolers? One. California or Texas? Pennsylvania. Welcome to the club.
There's another one over there.
What state? Tennessee. Welcome. Yes. So I'm going to be talking a lot about this homeschool movement. And then any dropouts? Woo! We always have one. Thank you. All right, so let's get started. So what are the biggest challenges that students face today? Right, and then through this conference we've learned they're pretty much the same as adults. They're feeling disorganized, they're overwhelmed, they're not eating right, they're not staying healthy, they're failing to manage money, which is a big one. They're failing to network. And there's one thing that I don't understand. So oftentimes I start tutoring and I get these two fairy tales that I don't know where they originated from. The first one, the boys will say, I don't need to learn that. I'm going to work for my friend's business. All right? So I don't know where anybody start a business? Does anybody hire friends from high school in their business? I don't. The second one, the girls, they say they want to marry a rich person. I blame Disney for that, but we'll save that for another time. Relationship issues are huge, so it's really hard to talk to your parents and manage expectations because I've worked for math professors and students, for whatever reason, they want to put up as many barriers to the teachers. So tutoring or homeschooling as a parent is one of the bigger challenges. That's kind of where I come in. Poor grades and poor sleep habits. This is one that I've been teaching for years now in the military. An Air Force pilot is not allowed to pilot a military aircraft unless he gets 8 hours of sleep and is monitored and tracked. And I tell this story to all of my students because I think the investment in their education is more expensive than the fighter jet for the military because it's the world that I'm going to inherit, and it's the world that my kids are going to inherit and that their grandkids are going to inherit. So for me, investing in education it's the one that's going to have the biggest multiplier, which is why I decided to work here. In education. And I just want to hear it from the richest person on the planet. Here's his take on why the school system is broken, and then we're going to get into the panel on ways and opportunities to fix it, what's been working in our state, so you have a glimpse on what's coming around the corner so that you can be a part of this massive transformation and that you can help benefit the next generation as well. Oh, didn't want to play the video. But he basically said in the video, the reason why education has failed is the students, they don't know why they're being taught mathematics. So they don't know why they're going 180 hours a year for each topic. They have no idea why. It's not relevant to them. And the experience is limited to their imagination. All right, so I want to skip that slide. So my first question to my panelists, what are the biggest challenges that schools and teachers are facing today? Would anybody volunteer?
Sure. So for me, I know this year my staff trying to participate in hybrid learning, and when I say hybrid, I mean that they had to teach both in-person students and online students at the same time, not separate blocks, but like at the same time. We set it up that way specifically so that as kids were given the option throughout the school year to return to in-person or return to virtual learning. And so if we didn't do it that way, we would have to change a lot of schedules and revamp everything. So we kept it that way so there could be that fluctuation back and forth, but it was incredibly difficult for my staff to do that. And we had a pretty open relationship and dialogue between them and I, and they've been pretty open about that. Yeah, if we're doing this again next year, Lampron, I ain't quite sure if I'm gonna keep doing this. So, but like also having leadership at the top echelon of schools and districts that are willing to participate and change and see what opportunities are available, and then make those a priority within their district. And like, how do we be able to accept that some of that's going to be tough and it's not always going to work, and we're going to have some failure, and embracing failure and fail forward. And I think that if we do that, it teaches our kids something different as well, right? Our kids, we've always been taught that they should get the right answer, and sometimes you won't, and it's okay. And being able to encourage kids to try and be willing to fail, and for us as staff members, embracing them when they do and not scolding them if they made an attempt and something didn't go quite right. So we have a responsibility to make sure that kids feel safe enough to try and maybe not be successful and still come out on the other side and try again. And you change something, you iterate, you do something different, and maybe it's successful 5 or 10 times down the road. But be willing to take that chance.
Thank you, Philip.
Okay. I think teachers have always had it hard. This year, I think maybe the rest of America kind of saw how hard they had it. I think the biggest problem with the teachers have is that they're expected to be more than just the teacher now, right? You gotta be the counselor, maybe the nurse, the tutor for free, a whole bunch of things. And then they had to get good at Zoom and people blowing up your phone, texting you, what's your kid doing in real time. It's just really a tough job. For schools, you know, like I'm really proud that our school is gonna offer 4 advanced coding courses next year for the first time. In reality, we should have done that 20 years ago. Sometimes we can see what we should do, but the state laws, to hear what you have to say about that, limit what we can do. We're motivated by what tests we're going to have to take at the end of the year. All my motivations for making my school district look good are almost exactly the opposite of what I should do for kids every day. Do we teach to the test at University Academy? Yeah, we do. Do we go for that U.S. World News Report award every year? Yeah, we do. If I wanted a gold U.S. World News Report, I'd have to give up dual credit to get the AP course to get those points, and sometimes we do that. The sticks and carrots are just not aligned. And I think over the last 20 years, unfortunately, because we were slow to align, we don't have the teaching force that we need to now offer the innovative and relevant courses that our economy is going to demand. So try finding an advanced manufacturing teacher in your district right now. If you do, let me know where that tree is. I'll go shake it. Or a coding teacher. And we've had to get real creative with using private companies to do that. So I think that the most frustrating thing is we know what we should be doing. The supply on the labor market isn't there to do that. And we're handcuffed by 180 days, 6.5 hours, stupid Scantron tests at the end of the year, all these things that don't matter. So I'm looking forward to an earthquake. Not a real one. Sorry, you California people. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm from California. I'm offended. I think that the number one overarching problem in education right now is a lack of big picture thinking and a overabundance of cynicism. As many here, I'm sure, are aware that we have an education system that's a carryover from the 1800s, a model called the Prussian model, which is based on a factory model of shuffling kids through. Every age gets a grade, you push them through, you get grades, and it's kind of like a sausage factory. It might have worked well when people were going to factories in the 1800s, and even that's arguable. But oftentimes when you hear about calls for education reform, it often comes down to ideas of tinkering with the current model. And what I'm hoping will catch on is the idea of, well, okay, we're in the 21st century now. We are hearing incredible ideas here today. But overall, if you were to hypothetically, let's say, throw everything in the trash and say, okay, let's have a blank whiteboard, let's create the perfect education system, what would that look like? And that's why I cite cynicism, because people can oftentimes be hardwired to be afraid of thinking really, really big. I'd like to point out, just as a historical precedent in American history, you look at something like the Manhattan Project, you look at something like the Apollo program, these were reactions to major threats, either the development of a nuclear bomb from our enemies or the space race in reaction to our Sputnik moment, in which case those are proven situations in which when a leadership has enough willpower and focus and motivation, incredible things can collectively be accomplished. So what I'd like to see ultimately is an education Apollo program where people exactly like who come to this event, and maybe I think many of you, hopefully what I'd like to see is for you guys to end up being on an official think tank that can literally design a new education system that can be ubiquitously applied to the entire country and develop something that will be perfected and make the old system look extremely obsolete in retrospect.
Now, if you look at the next slide, you realize that right now, teachers are being asked to be everything to kids. And it's a tough thing. And I think some of our biggest challenges right now are parent and community expectations. Now, I live in a very rural state. I live in Montana. We still have more cows than people. And if you were going to have your basketball team play our basketball team, you would be on a bus for 6 hours because we're so spread apart. But if you look at the challenges, most of Montana's schools are public schools. We have a few private, a few charter schools, but most of them are public schools. So everyone goes to the public school, regardless of your socioeconomic status, regardless of anything. So the parent and community expectations are huge. And believe me, the parents are in there at the schools and at the superintendent's office, Tony, telling you what should be happening in your schools. And there are an infinite variety of student needs because we embrace everyone. We are not like some of the countries that don't, only certain kids go to the schools. Everyone goes to the schools. And I think about, all that means. And we have so much varied support from both parents and administrators, depending on what that particular person values.
Yeah, that's rough. That's why I went into tutoring. I'm the solution. You guys are sending me business. Thank you. All right, so let's get to the solution. So we just went over the problems. We all know students are bored. We all know they're not motivated, under-challenged. So back in the day when my grandpa was growing up, you would have to get into like an Oxford University to get access to these textbooks that had the periodic table. Today you can Google like the periodic table. Like I'm pretty sure Elon Musk didn't go to school for engineering. I'm pretty sure he self-taught it to himself. All the formulas are there and they're not going to change whether you Google it or find it in a textbook. So we're at this crux where our access to information is close to infinite, and we're having this technological boom where pretty soon our memories will not be fallible. So my tutoring business is mainly structured on teaching students how to memorize, right? Short-term and long-term memory. You need to memorize this page of stuff for this test. And I don't speak any French, but I've tutored French students and they've gotten A's in French because tests come down to memorizing. That's it. And memory is very fallible, and I'll prove it to you. Does anybody remember what they ate 3 Wednesdays ago for lunch? No. And my students feel the same way. So we're at this place where technology is skyrocketing. Our access to it is there. So our students are learning faster and faster and faster. They're learning calculus now as soon as 11th grade. Right? There are prodigies as young as 10, 11, 12 that understand the fundamental principle of an atom and that go to universities for young and talented and the gifted, such as Johns Hopkins University. These kids exist, all right? And this is why I'm so excited to be in education. I love watching each generation get stronger and sharper. Now, the problem with your classic lecture-style classroom is that it fails to address the experience part. So learning is a two-track thing, right? So you have all these processes that are happening in the brain. I think there are 9 of them, and I'm going to go over that in the next slide. And then there's the experience, which is us in this room. Like, are we going to, like, the experience of it, right? So as a lecturer, it's hard for me to know what you're experiencing or share that experience with you or even influence it. So I'm missing half of the learning track, but not as a tutor. As a tutor, I'm able to come in, so if you have any needs, it's like a custom tailored suit. Whatever it is for that occasion, this is what the fit is, and this is how you rock that style. This is the workaround for the belly, for example. So my students fall in love with learning once they're experiencing something they desire. And I've learned they desire the same things that we do, more fun and more money. So I'm going to go into this a little bit more into learning. So this was just the learning bubble itself. And this is very apparent to me, like watching my first graders learn, because they'll shift from the different colors. And each color is a different style of thinking that you possess. And all of them are firing and competing for the focus. So like I'll be like teaching Kaylee how to read, and we're going through the letters, and out of nowhere she goes, "Gene, let me show you a handstand." Right? She's totally lost focus. To her, that's her way of saying, "Mr. Nech, this lesson is boring. I don't want to learn how to read. I want to have more fun." So her motivation is not there. She wants to have fun. She's not having fun learning how to read. And I open up to Kaylee and I say, "Hey, it's okay if you're not having fun. Let's change it. Let's have fun." That's the custom fit of it. You don't like blue? We'll get you a different color. You can't do that in a classic lecture setting. You can't measure or manage their experience. But as a tutor, I get to do that, and I see huge results. The first thing that I prescribe to all of my students is 8 hours of sleep. Now, I'm really big into tracking my own sleep and reading all about it. What I've learned so far, light sleep is the formula. It's the remainder. So we do deep sleep first. We fall asleep. Deep sleep regenerates your body at a cellular level and gets you ready for the physical activities of the day tomorrow. And like light sleep would be neutral for my stick shift drivers. It's kind of like the getting into gear sleep. And then you can shift down to REM, which is rapid eye movement. That's where you have dreams. And nobody really knows why we have dreams. But like we wake up and we have dreams, and they may alter a decision or a motivation of that day. Teachers don't get the opportunity to influence dreams. As a tutor, I'm so close to the experience of my student and what they're going through that I'm in their dreams. And I'm part of the motivation that they have is not letting me down as a tutor. And that's like the best part. So they know I'm in it for their graduation, and that's my favorite part. Now, the best thing with tutoring is the homeschool market. So this is the opportunity I was talking to you about. California and Texas are leading the homeschool revolution. So we've all been talking about the universities getting a swift kick in the butt and being reformed. We're all talking about totally trashing the whole school system and maybe redesigning it from a foundation. Homeschool's got traction in California. 28, call it 30% of our students are homeschooled. When I started my tutoring business 3 years ago, that number was 15%. So it's doubled in 3 years. Texas is following us, second largest student body of homeschoolers, and together Texas and California represent 25% of the homeschool market. So this trend of homeschooling or unschooling or deschooling, it started in the West, so if you're in the West, whoop, and it's gonna spread east, and I'm okay with that. So that's an opportunity trend for you to look forward to and hopefully be a part of. And this is my slide. If you Google me, Gen Nech, or just email me, gennech@gmail.com, I can send this to you. This is a prototype, and hopefully it'll make its way into the neuroscience and learning. Oh, and then what's this? This is my sleep tracker. This tracks actually my REM, deep sleep, and light sleep, and this was 2 days ago. So artificial intelligence, I want to finish on that. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And I find it impossible to measure sleep. So we need artificial intelligence there to measure sleep. And sleep is a big, big one for me in terms of creativity and learning and memory consolidation. So with AI and tutoring, I feel like we have a really nice edge in maximizing education. And yeah. I mean, I'm most proud. I'll just give a shout out. I have a student named Golan. He's 10 years old. He is going to Johns Hopkins University to study physics. He's 10. He's a homeschool prodigy, and he's my first of the kind. And I look forward to a world where we have more and more prodigies at the age of 10 designing things and changing our world. I'm not afraid of it. So.
Yeah, I'm kind of echoing that. Like, there's no, with the access to information that kids have now, like, there's no reason that some kids aren't going to learn faster than others. And I think we maybe need to step away from the idea that kids need to be in school for 13 years to access the education that everybody else does, and fast track some of the stuff. Like, if kids are able to, meet the standards and criteria that we have set forth in a faster time period and progress more quickly, like, we do have to take some social aspects into consideration and make sure that they're, able to interact with their peers and not around. Well, I don't know if they need to be anyways. So, but like taking into consideration like who they're around in their school setting. But like we have to reconsider kind of what we're thinking now. Like just like we don't learn everything at the same rate, right? Like we get stuff more quickly or less quickly depending on what it is, and our kids do too. So talking about the AI aspect, like there's a lot of products that are available now. Where we can track that and know who's ready to move on and who's not, and really personalize the learning. We're just not necessarily accessing on a wide scale now in public education.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know if I'll get to talk again, so I'm going to say a couple things about this and a couple other things, and then I'll be done.
You have a place to grab a very
there,
important award.
Agree on AI and virtual could be really powerful. We've been dabbling around in it, at least in my career, since 2008. What I found is that your self-motivated students, it actually widens the achievement gap because your self-motivated students, regardless of their background or their socioeconomic status, get ahead. They work on it when they go home. They don't like to be held by the schedule of the class, and they go, and they start to separate out, and they get bored sometimes. If the school is able to move them on to the next thing, if you have a nice community college partner or a four-year college partner that can take them when they're 15, 16, ready for that, that's great. So those things work really well. Things like we were talking about IXL can be used as a supplement, Study Island.
It's a great foundation.
It's a great foundation. We, at UA, what we try to do is we try to give all of our kids, we're 75% free reduced lunch. We try to give all of our kids the same things that middle and upper middle class kids get. We privately fundraise for it. So we provide Princeton review tutoring for ACT prep for 6 weeks during the junior year, and then another 6 weeks during the senior year, and it works. Lo and behold, when you get small group instruction targeted, it works. We contracted with a company called Yup. If you've never heard of that, they're not paying me to say this, but Yup is based in the Silicon Valley. It gives you access to on-demand virtual tutors for high-end math, so Algebra 2, Trig, calculus, X, Y, Z. So if your kids can't afford a Gene is, doing what Gene does is the best. But if money doesn't allow for that, AI can start to plug in gaps. And Yup is $35 a kid. It's your whole school. You can't just say, I'm going to do these 10. So 35 times whatever you got, that's what it is. For me, we only have 400 kids in that high school, so that's cheaper than full-time tutor to do that. And then the last thing I'll say is we just contracted with a company called 2 Sigma, which they're providing those 4 advanced computer science classes I was telling you about. We don't have teachers like that in Kansas City right now. So these guys are teaching remotely. I don't even know where from, but they're good. And then we have a person, watching the classroom. But those 10 kids are on a computer getting that from that person. Nice of Missouri to allow us to have a little cutout that uncredentialed, awesome teacher doesn't ding against me, which is a really dumb law. But there's some cool solutions out there. You're going to be hamstrung by your local policies and your state policies, maybe. But I'd be interested to see what this administration, when I say this administration, the Biden administration, does to maybe loosen up some of the well-intentioned things in No Child Left Behind and ESSA, but to give us some more freedom to move as quick as the private sector needs us to go. Thank you.
I just want to add something. The gentleman to the corner with the pleasant accent mentioned. I think that the big elephant in the room, and I'm almost certain that every single person here has come across the same critique. It's probably the number one critique that's been thrown at our system, is the idea of its ultra standardization. That seems to be the most cited critique in general for the education system. And I think that if we start to really hone in, going from theory to practice, of what it would actually mean in practical implementation to solve that, the ultimate solution is custom education. And rather than creating a top-down imposition approach, to have a feedback approach where the child's feedback is supremely important, where there's a concerted effort in understanding the child's learning style, the child's personality type, the child's interests, passions, and so on, and therefore tailoring that child into their path, which is why tutoring is so important. I think one of the cultural things, that stigmas that people consciously or unconsciously have internalized is the idea that teachers are the main thing, tutors are the side thing, when in reality, the power of one-on-one is arguably much more potent than the lecture style. Therefore, when you wrap it all together, if you were to have a custom education system with a high emphasis on tutoring and a high emphasis on focusing on the child's growth and listening to their passions and guiding them towards that, you could ultimately have extremely powerful practical outcomes of a higher percentage of the population ultimately ending up as self-actualized people who have developed mastery in their fields, which of course would produce untold dividends for society as a whole.
Does anybody else want to add? So now's the time, teachers, if you want to become tutors, let us know. All right, let's move on. So what are some ways that tutors, coaches, and mentors that they can facilitate the learning of skills needed for both gifted and remedial education?
Yeah, so I think we can be really intentional about what we offer kids access to and how we get them engaged in the work. And so kind of a little backstory since Phoenix mentioned the accent. Anybody from North Carolina in here? Anybody been to North Carolina? All right, appreciate it. So Eastern North Carolina, what we call E&C, is a little different. I didn't realize how different it was till I went to college. And I went to college at UNCW, which is in Eastern North Carolina. That's where I did my undergrad. And when I got there, like I'd done really well in school, did really well in high school in kind of a big fish, small pond scenario. Thought I was just as prepared as anybody else when I got to college. And then when I got there, I realized how much I felt like I was not ready in the sense that I did not have a great background in geography or understanding politics or the context of some social scenarios and things like that. So one of the things that we tried to make sure at NECP was that I want to make sure every kid, when they went to college, they felt like they did belong. Because I didn't. I felt out of place for quite some time. So what we've tried to do is, in the vein of being more targeted of what kids have access to, North Carolina has something called Career and College Promise, CCP. I'm sure that other states have something similar, but any kid that's enrolled in a public high school in North Carolina can go to a community college and take courses for free. We try to also enhance that at our school by taking care of their books. So like you have no reason not to go take a community college course while you're enrolled in high school with us, and we also try to expand our AP offerings so that kids could have access to those things. We partnered with the College Board. They had a program called Pre-AP that they wanted to institute a few years ago, and we were part of their pilot program to just get kids to get away from the stigma of AP. So they took pre-AP courses from the time they were freshman, sophomore, junior, so that they felt the name was no longer a stigma, had a stigma attached to it, but also they were, their instruction was created around principles that were used in AP courses because we wanted our kids to make sure that they felt like they belonged when they stepped onto a college campus. Again, the resources that are available to us now to be able to target our education is unreal. We have FEV Tutor is like an online tutoring service that would offer tutoring at all hours of the night. They're a company called Gifted Generation Text Online, that does SEL focus, and they have a platform where kids go online and talk about how they create a little dialogue of how they're feeling. They associate it with a color, so when the color changes or the kid picks a different color, kind of sends a signal to the administrators on a macro level of like, this kid's feeling different, like how can we help them? There's just so much that's around now if we go search for it, and that's kind of what I'm doing in my process right now, is trying to find what's working in different places and apply that and offer that to schools that I work with, because there's no reason for us to have some of the same issues that we've been having for the last 20 or 30 years when everything around us has new and possibilities and offerings. Like if we embrace that, there's no telling where public education could be in the next 10 years.
said, all right, well, Phoenix has got me fired up here a little bit, so I'm actually on your team. You might think I'm going to stonewall you and not want to change because I like being a superintendent of a K-12 district. There are days I do, but there's a lot of things that we want to change too. Here's what I want to say. Fusion Academy. Anybody ever heard of Fusion Academy? Okay. They didn't exist 5 years ago, and look up how many there are now, and they're on the coast. And it's a lot of parents that can't maybe not afford the $30,000 a year private school, but maybe the $10,000 a year. It's like your kid might go there 2 or 3 times a week to check in with teachers and then take home a lot of work, right? And incredibly popular. That model scares the you-know-what out of traditional districts because that's what parents like. We needed traditional schools to look like what we did for the last 100 years because people had to go to work. You needed to drop your kid off. I needed to watch your kid. You needed me for summer school because you needed me to watch your kid so you could go to work even during the summer. If more and more people are going to work from home or flexible hours, and your kid is not happy at my school going through that factory that Phoenix described, which doesn't make any sense, why we all go 50 minutes at a time, there are going to be a lot of options open that are going to be made by maybe some of you in this audience or places like Fusion. And K-12 is either going to dig their heels in and say, no, we're going to do it the same way because these are our jobs, blah, 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 blah. Or I would suggest if K-12 wants to be relevant the way it is now for the next 100 years, maybe they join the same side as the parents. When parents go to the legislature and gripe, maybe if they pay enough taxes, the legislature listens. But if all the teachers go to the legislature and say, we don't like the system anymore, we're all going to quit, which is kind of de facto what we're seeing right now, I think that's going to get lost to change. So if we don't like school the way it is now, the people that can actually probably force it to change the most are going to be the professionals that are doing that if we all kind of make a solidified statement. That's all.
So there is a way that we all tutor and coach and mentor. Brianna is a member of the Karuk Native American tribe. She has a master's degree in viola performance, and when she was 12, we took her aside. She had parents, both of whom were addicts, and she was on a path to dropping out, but very bright, very gifted. And we asked her if we could work with her on leadership skills. And she was not a charismatic leader. She was a quiet, lead by example leader. She was a servant leader. She led by serving others. And by making Brianna a leader, her teachers just encouraged her to do what she had inside of her to do. And when you work with students, whether it's remedial, I'm thinking of Simon, who I still have a composition lesson with twice a year, and he has Down syndrome. And he has composed over 300 pieces, and they're good. They're good musical compositions. So when we help children by helping them know how to collaborate and communicate and be a good citizen and stand up for others and model the way, depending on their personality, we can mentor all of that in kids. We can tutor it. We can coach that. And these are kids that, whether they have remedial needs or whether they are so gifted that we have got to keep them from being bored, when we mentor them to leader, then they become the student leaders, and then we grasp the other kids in the class that didn't stick out to us right away as leaders and figure out, are they a charismatic leader? Are they a servant leader? Do they lead with integrity? Do they lead with perseverance? Are they just a quiet example? So mentoring and tutoring and coaching is something that we can all do, no matter how busy we are, even with a group of 50 kids in a band or 25 kids in a math class.
That's right, and it's easier now than it ever was, and it's only getting easier and better, right? All right, moving on. How can both tutoring and artificial intelligence enrich professional development for education?
Yeah, so, and I've kind of spoken about this off and on all along, but like again, the amount of things that are available and accessible to us now is really incredible. I've spoken with a company a while back called DevMasters as we're moving into more potential for virtual instruction. Like they have created a software that, and they've done it initially for like businesses who were trying to do trainings virtually with their employees and things of that nature. But it will track, when a kid logs in, it'll track their face and determine how long did you actually look at the screen versus were you looking somewhere else. Did you look away at your phone? And it'll send a percentage of time that the kid actually was focusing on the screen to the parents and to the schools and things like that. There's just incredible amounts of things. There's another company called Verkada, and they're a software company, but they create cameras. And there's the ability for, if you have pictures of your kids uploaded into, we use Power School in North Carolina, which is our LMS. But if there's something else that another state uses, in the same vein, like it will match with that process and track the kid's face as they go through the school. If you need to determine where were they at a certain time, it's just, so that's cool technology. Also a little scary to me that that's available and accessible in the public sector now. So there's just a wide array of things that can be used. And as far as PD could be done in the same way, like are we giving our teachers the same help that we're looking to give our kids? So we could match the types of things that principals are rating teachers on and then track that data at a greater level, or those data at a greater level, and to determine is the principal giving the teacher the support that they say that they need based on the ratings that they're giving them within the system. And then at a district level, are we holding principals accountable for giving teachers the information that they need to be successful? Again, just the amount of access that we have to things now could really transform how we do education if we embrace it.
I was going to say everything you just said, maybe slightly different companies, but we're seeing the same thing.
Just a quick question. Who here has seen the documentary The Social Dilemma? Okay, good amount. And if any of you are familiar with the story of Cambridge Analytica and how they manipulated Facebook essentially they essentially use AI through data to manipulate people into behavior. So artificial intelligence can be extraordinarily powerful to empower or to completely fleece and manipulate and control. So I think that the future of artificial intelligence, if it is to be used wisely for educational purposes, is to take the same type of technology that you've heard about in The Social Dilemma or Cambridge Analytica. Long story short, if you haven't seen it, the idea is that social media companies have an enormous amount of data on our habits and our essentially unconscious minds to the point where they know more about us than we do about our own selves and can predict our own behavior. However, that data is used very explicitly to control us in order to buy things and to vote for things and so on. If that same technology could be used, however, with an extremely benevolent purpose in mind, where all this data can be accumulated in order to guide us into higher levels of self-actualization, whatever that may mean in terms of ironing out the details, but that I think could be extraordinarily powerful. Cambridge Analytica essentially used data from the Big Five personality test to create an extremely accurate profile of what our behavior would ultimately entail in any given situation. So I think the idea of using data through an artificial intelligence software program that can be invented, or I'm sure somebody in the audience here probably is working on something like this, but the idea would be is if we could create profiles on Myers-Briggs personality tests, Big Five personality tests, psychometrics in general, learning styles, and then through data and smart through deep learning processes, be able to manage this data in order to match students with the right types of tutors, the right types of curricula, in order to most effectively achieve a situation where they learn in a very interested and engaged way. It could be a very powerful tool.
And I think I'm going to keep this really brief, that if you are using artificial intelligence, I sure hope you went to Dr. Ingrid's session this morning. I am thinking about artificial intelligence even more different than I did before. It was wonderful. You know, I think of one of my choir teachers who is in the middle of a piece and all of a sudden says, put your music down. If you've got your phone with you, take it out. If you don't, go grab a Chromebook. And all of a sudden there's a short theory lesson. That is an amazing way to use artificial intelligence. Also, during the pandemic, I don't know what each state looked like, but Montana was just locked down for over a year. And I know that my granddaughter, who is a 6th grader, is studying with a professional jazz singer. And the two of them, through artificial intelligence, they were able to continue their lessons and in such creative ways. If you are interested in getting leadership in with your classes, I'm not going to talk about this because our time is short, but feel free to email me. I'm just renee.westlake@gmail.com. So there's a dot between the first and last name. Thanks, Jean.
Thank you, Renee. And anybody else want to add something?
Yeah, just to add, before we go too far on this, like I just feel the need to express, like, wow, I think we got to accept that, like, these data or the idea of AI is not going away, right? And like while we may not have access to the people who are creating those things, what we do have access to, or the next generation is going to run them. So like, in addition to the curricula that we're providing and things of that nature, we do, and we've spoken about leadership a lot here and in previous sessions, like who are we developing as people, right? So like, what are they going to do with that information as it becomes accessible to them in their next 20 or 30 years? Like we need to hyper focus on who we're developing, not just the content that we're providing, but like who are these kids going to be later? What kind of attributes do they have? What kind of morals and ethics do they have? So that when they do have access to this information, if they're leading technology companies, that they do proper things with it and they use it to enhance our world and not provide it some detriment.
Thank you. Well said. And anything else? With that, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out. Big thank you for GFEL for hosting this. And everybody, just give yourselves a round of applause.